Yo, okay, I think we can start. Ooh, we got Dionysus, Little Yapper, the gang,
Full house.
Full house. Yeah. And welcome to today's office hours. Where is my special guest? Hang on. Let me see. So anyway, welcome to today. We'll do a couple of recaps on a couple of things that are coming up. I've got I've got a couple of announcements coming a little after. I'm sure you do too. There's a lot of other stuff that's happening, and we are kind of working on lots. So today, welcome, Joseph.
Thank you.
We'll get to you in a second. Yesterday is the 1st of December. We are rocking and rolling. DAO structures set up and going. So all the contributors are getting paid today. We finalized all contributions. So for the first time ever, people are getting rewarded for the work. It's fantastic. We're really excited about it. We're also going to open up the server as well, I think, Marcus, so that people can start joining again, because like we had 200 people join, and now we have to we had to dial back like what was happening. And now that we have a bit more structure, we can go from there, which is really exciting, really, really cool. Very, very exciting stuff coming up. I mean, the next month is kind of like a bit of a slowdown because like we're going to see kind of, Christmas, everybody goes away for the holidays, and it just that's just how it is, like in any sort of industry. But January is kind of where all the big cool announcements are. So there's going to be 2 new sets of assets hopefully launched by then, which seem to be on track, so that's all good. They're going to be more or like later vintages, so basically stuff from 2016 onwards is one, and then the other one is going to be a different one. One of which is going to also include gold standard, American Carbon Registry. They're going to have bridges to pretty much every single carbon market that exists, which is going to be awesome, super exciting. We had a wonderful chat with a bunch of people this week, mostly institutionals, all of a sudden getting really interested in what we're doing. I had a couple chats with some various folks that really understand what we're doing, and they're like, okay, how do we get involved? And I've always said the same thing to them is put Klima on your balance sheet and show it to the world. So this week we saw Trustswap do that of their own volition. I never talked to them. They just decided that's something that they want to do, which is fantastic. The larger institutions that I'm talking to now, many of which are kind of warming to the idea and slowly but surely building positions, which is really cool. And so then we have like a bunch of talks with others. This week, maybe in Olympus news, we saw GSR put up a market-making proposal for OHM, which was quite interesting, meaning that they're moving towards a centralized exchange listing. Very, very exciting stuff. Hopefully we kind of learned from what their approach is there and how they get to that. It'd be very interesting to see the results of that, namely just because of how big GSR is as a name. Like they're really, really sophisticated in that in market making, so it's really cool. GOHM is deploying this week or next week, the 10th, I think, of December or something like that is the schedule, meaning that GOHM wrapped stake Klima bonds will go very shortly next week, I think, as well. So we will start building that liquidity as well, and basically be the place for OHM Klima, which is going to be awesome. I'm very, very excited about that stuff. Trying to think, is there anything else I'm missing? I got an email yesterday from World Bank again, following up. They want to meet next week, so we'll see how that goes. They're really interested. They really like what Klima's doing. They want us to participate in some sort of innovation thing and present what we've done. So I don't know. We will work on the marketing side of things. Ooh, the podcast. Planet of the Klimates. I wanted to make sure that you guys all know that exists. It's super cool. The first guest is going to be Sven, who is our resident artist, and who's also doing the art piece that's launching tomorrow. So tomorrow, there's going to be a 3-day auction, or actually 2 days, from the 3rd to the 5th, on Polygon, with this piece that's going up there. It's going to be the same as the IDO piece, in the sense that it's going to be an ARweave 200-year storage piece, designed by Sven, And all proceeds that we raised from it are going to OEF as part of their Ocean Drop campaign, which is also starting tomorrow. So it's going to be very, very cool. You may have seen the preview in the portal on Twitter. I shared it a couple of times. It's very captivating. It's like this all-seeing eye. It's very cool. And what's special about it is it has the equivalent of one wrapped staked Klima in it. So index adjusted, it's about 2.1-ish for sKlima in it, which will grow over time. So this piece of artwork that's going for sale not only has a value of whatever the artwork is, but it also has a Klima in it that builds over time that it cannot be withdrawn. So this NFT basically holds this forever. There's no way to withdraw it, and it's basically going to be the way we treat it in the KlimaDAO ecosystem is like the final staker. Like basically, we always talk about with the bank run scenario. From this point on, that NFT piece will be the final staker, so to speak, and will express an economic interest in the whole ecosystem, which is very, very cool. I mean, Sven is probably one of the coolest NFT artists out there. That's not me fanboying. It's just I think it's really cool. And yeah, so tomorrow, I'll post a bunch of announcements. I've been working quite heavily on it, just writing the contract myself, and with Sven, I've been working on a couple things. There's also a dashboard we built with Benson. Cujo helped actually quite a bit too, to get a bunch of data into it, and we'll preview that tomorrow as well, which is awesome, and it's going to be very, very cool. Super, super excited about it. Other than that, I don't have any other announcements, but I do have Joseph here from Blockchain for Climate. I invited to talk to us today about ITMOs, BITMOs, the broader carbon market, what he's been working on. He's an expert who's been doing this for 20 plus years, I think. Maybe I butchered that, I don't know. And and he's going to talk about, Verra, gold standard, all that stuff, and all the cool, wicked developments that are happening. Unless you guys have anything else, Lil Yapper, Dionysus, Bo, Chaz, Marcus, I'm just going to let Joseph take it from here.
All right. Thank you. And good day, everyone. Good morning from the West Coast. And thanks so much for the invitation, Archimedes. So yeah, my name's Joseph Pallant, and I'm a huge believer in KlimaDAO and working hard to help everyone make this project a success. And it's 17 years in the carbon market, so it'll be 20 in the blink of an eye. And so yeah, I'm one of these folks that has been a long time participant in the carbon market, developing first of carbon offset protocols and methodologies, so that we could use them on our first of carbon offset projects, significantly in the forest carbon space, but along with fuel switching, renewables, etc. And went down the Ethereum rabbit hole in 2017, saw a lot of fascinating uses, none of which were quite right at that time, and landed on something that, I think even resonates right now, in where Klima is, which is I found a use case that really crossed the tools available and the needs of the moment, between the traditional carbon market space and blockchain. And that was seeing the opportunity to build a platform to enable national governments to issue and exchange their Paris Agreement carbon credits. So in 2017, it was a couple years after the signing of the Paris Agreement, and there was this thing called Article 6, which laid out the rough strokes of what an international carbon market would look like. It's segmented into sort of a sovereign, national issued type of unit, an Article 6.2 ITMO, internationally transferred mitigation outcome, and then also an Article 6.4, which is kind of like a clean development mechanism 2.0, like the original UN carbon market 2.0, where project developers develop, but then do have to get the blessing of national governments to take those carbon credits essentially off of the national inventory of the country and float them into wherever they're going to go and eventually retired in some other country. And so we were excited to build a platform leveraging NFTs to enable countries to do that sooner. And we were trying to do it ahead of any official agreement, which didn't quite fly. But then fast forward to last month, we finally got a national agreement at COP26 in Glasgow. And it's pretty amazing, right? Like all the countries of the world from all different interest spots, positions came together to say, yes, we want to move this forward. And so this is good. And so this really sets the stage for a, near to midterm issuance of these Paris Agreement carbon credits, which really unlock a whole nother level of climate collaboration around the world, whole new tools to connect demand and capital, so demand for emission reduction outcomes and the money to do it, to these individual projects around the world that actually are, they're the tip of the spear. They are how we get and keep carbon out of the atmosphere. And so this is all super exciting, but there's a bit of a hitch, which is that, as kind of evidenced by that 6 years from Paris Agreement to Article 6 signing, there is, both an international dynamic and then just a bureaucracy dynamic. And, even to give them the benefit of the doubt, it's hard work and it takes a long time to build these structures. From the get-go, we've seen our platform, the BITMO platform, Blockchain Internationally Transferred Mitigation Outcomes platform, as a tool to help speed through to this ability for national governments to issue their credits, have them move around, and be retired or redeemed on the far side. We are stoked that we launched we've been in beta testing on Rinkeby sort of for the last year, and then we're now live on Ethereum, and we are ready for national governments to use this tool today to issue and exchange their carbon credits. If I can tell a little bit more, we're using ERC 1155 NFTs. So we've taken the approach of, the value of a carbon credit very significantly as, an ephemeral environmental asset is based on its documentation and its, paper trail or digital trail. This is, of course, one of the reasons why I had a good marriage with that. And so because if we're to be successful, if the world's to stop climate change, and there is to be this massive global market in carbon credits, we've seen that if we can have as much data travel around as possible with each of these tons, we've got the most likely chance for success to grow a market and to have the transparency that governments and everybody's going to need to engage in this. Carbon credits are strange enough, let alone tokenized carbon credits. And so with our BITMOs, they carry key information like vintage, project type, country of origin, a small description, a picture, sort of as characteristics. They show up in OpenSea. So, when you go look at your characteristics, so you can see those all there. And when viewing, at least through our BITMO platform, you can actually also see all of the PDF'd long form, hundreds of pages of validation and verification and issuance data packed right in there. And so kind of a maximalist vision within pretty slimline DRC 1155s. You can move them one at a time. You can move them a million. To have what's needed for the international carbon market to, chew on, digest, and transact with. And, I think just to wrap it up, we're, as a carbon market native and a longtime blockchain person, really trying to create that proper marriage of those two worlds. And I think with the Verra notice a little while ago, with everybody's enthusiasm to get this done, also with the Verra indication that they want to work with people to make this work, they want to work with crypto to make this work. I see that sort of that confluence of these two worlds as critically important, developing so quickly. The whole Klima and Toucan and everybody contributor team, absolutely have the chops to make it happen. And I'm really delighted to be helping and of service and working with the traditional carbon market to try to understand these tools. We want to be able to land the BITMO platform. We want to be able to issue BITMOs and have those used by whoever wants to use them. Fundamentally, we know that Klima would be an amazing use case and an amazing source of demand for this, and really clicking into this global market, this global vision that's kind of on the tip of a lot of people's tongues, and is necessary if we're gonna we're going to get going in the right direction. So thanks so much, and happy to answer any questions folks have.
I think the biggest question everyone has is, what microphone do you use?
Nice. This is just my iPhone wired speakers. No, that's not true. I use the Shure MX7. It's the one that can do the USB or the fancy connection. I just have USB. You'll see folks with the big black mics, and this is like the little brother of them.
Ooh. Yeah, because I just got a request. The podcast team, they want to throw you on there. So if you want to do that, I think that'd be great to have you on the Planet of the Klimates podcast.
It'd be a delight. And yeah, I had a 15 minutes of fame earlier this spring when everybody woke up to the climate impact of NFTs, and then following on that Bitcoin. And so had to sort of hurry a mic that was a little fancier than what I'd normally do, to go on TV and Canada's CBC and stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, this has been super. I mean, I always learn stuff talking to you, so it's very, very interesting. Always have a very cool perspective on things. It's awesome to see that. So do you have any insights, like is anyone ready to issue an ITMO?
Great question. So it's a bit of a blur right now, and we're trying to get on top of everything. We've been going to different countries sort of over the last 3 years, speaking with people in there. It's funny, the office of a government, it's called a national party. There's one in every country that's able to do this issuance of Article 6.2 ITMOs or the approval of Article 6.4 ITMOs. And so we've met with a variety of different countries. We kind of, we're stoked to talk to anybody, but we've really targeted, we've sort of stratified our hit list by countries that are natural buyers, sellers, or traders of ITMOs. So if countries are, trying to do a steep emission reductions and they're not going to have enough in country, we see those as sort of natural buyers. There's natural sellers, where people have great opportunity and just really need capital to get a lot of emission reductions generated. And then trading countries that sort of have their stock in trade have also been on that hit list. And so there's been a lot of interest, and prior to like 2.5 weeks ago, it was kind of a not quite wait and see. It's like hustle and see. And so now that that's been completed, we do have calls coming up with some national governments in the next little bit. Also working to engage with multilateral institutions to try to attach to pipelines. Of countries already engaged and connecting their national registries in and stuff like that. And so, as far as I know, and definitely up to 2 weeks ago, there have been absolutely zero ITMOs issued. If anybody has info differently, let me know. But it's really been that countries felt like they weren't able to do that pre-Article 6. And the risk is that they're going to have to wait for this thing called the International Transaction Log 2.0. The original one was under the CDM, to be up and running before they can issue and trade, because of this thing called corresponding adjustments. And I spoke really briefly to it earlier, that if, say that Canada went and reduced 1 million tons of carbon, but want to sell those credits to Norway, then if we did, Norway would be taking receipt of 1 million tons of emission reduction outcomes. Canada would actually have to increase its carbon footprint sort of artificially with this corresponding adjustment, so as to not double count those emission reductions like Canada and Norway was doing it. So one of our specific goals is to be either to replace that, or totally happy just to sort of stand in as a tool until that's created, because people are talking like 3 years till that gets created. So I think there is some disruption and hustle needing to happen right at that level. And if anybody has connections to national governments or folks making these decisions, please send them our way. Can do a demo. And what's really cool is we have our demo platform still on Rinkeby, but we actually are ready to roll on Ethereum. And so working hard on making that happen, Archimedes, and you guys will be the first to know.
Wonderful. Someone had a question, so you probably can shed a lot of light on this. So didn't Verra mention they want to distance themselves from crypto, but Joseph says they want to cooperate. So which is which? I know you did a huge deep dive on their statement.
Yeah. So they kind of did both in their statement. The first couple paragraphs are saying that they're not involved with this. They're not taking responsibility. Their scope ends with the retirement on their platform, and that they're not making any sort of commitments beyond that. But the last paragraph in that statement, I'm not sure if anybody wants to point to it, but it says specifically that they are, I forget if it's keen to work or working with the crypto space so that this can be done appropriately. So it really is both, but absolutely, this is not me making it up. They have expressed that they're keen to work on it. If anybody's got the exact statement there. And as I definitely see where Verra is coming from in this. And interestingly, one of the benefits of being around for a long time is sort of remembering old stories and when history sort of rhymes. So as a dominant standard in the space right now, 70% of the voluntary market issues through Verra. There's lots of people that have kind of used weasel words in the past to say that their credits are Verra certified or certified to the voluntary carbon standard. And people would say stuff like, using the voluntary carbon market standard, but they used the standard and maybe a methodology, but they actually weren't verified and issued through the system. So as a trusted market source and as a brand, there have already been situations where stuff's getting a little close for comfort and is just not appropriate in the case of people trying to pretend that they're Verra certified when they're not. So I can understand that sort of statement, and it's a statement of fact. Their work ends at the verification and retirement. And I believe that KlimaDAO and Toucan have done the absolute best possible job working with that existing traditional carbon market tool and structure and porting it online into blockchain. And this is actually, as one might imagine from working on the BITMO platform, this question of where is the right spot to take something from the default world or from the physical world and put it onto the blockchain. And different people have different takes on that. But my sort of like gut level take is go wherever the best off-chain information or source of truth exists and, do a handshake there and take it on from there. And so that's why I'm really proud of Toucan and Klima for taking Verra carbon offsets that have been verified, issued, and retiring them. That is the absolute strongest spot to take evidence of emission reduction or removal in the world that's benefited climate, that meets all the good practice guidelines to offsets, and putting it onto crypto. There's lots of other people that are saying, well, we don't want to use offsets, or our projects aren't really a good fit for offsets, so we're going to make up our own standard, and tokenizing that and bringing that on chain. And folks can do what they want to do, but I do really believe that Verra is absolutely top tier in terms of its off-chain quality, and I believe that what Klima and Toucan have done to bring on-chain is absolutely state-of-the-art right now. And as hoped for by the closing of that statement by Verra and by, I know, people's work behind the scenes to try to bring stuff together, I am hopeful that we'll be able to continue to improve, and this situation will be a driver for continuing to improve that handoff between traditional carbon markets and the physical world and the blockchain.
Wow, Joseph, thank you. That's those are some kind words, saying we've done the best possible job. I mean, that's huge coming from you. It's great to hear that. Do you guys want to open it up for give time for questions, Joseph? I'm sure we can bring some people on stage who probably have some questions for you. I don't know, Marcus. You should probably moderate who's allowed to ask questions and who's not.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple of questions that I think Joseph may have some interesting input on. So One question that just cropped up is sort of the long-term vision for what happens if we succeed and like climate change is averted and then carbon offsets are not necessarily needed as much, or at least not in the same volume. Like, will Klima's treasury diversify, or is there like still a long-term need for carbon offsets even if we do avert catastrophic climate change?
Wow. I love the forward vision of folks. And I do think that refining, there's probably a factual answer to that. I think refining a vision of that future can be really inspiring for everybody involved to try to get there. So I would absolutely encourage that. And by the by, when I got started in carbon offsets in 2004, a couple years in, I was like, you know what? Stuff is going really good. I feel like 5 years, so by 2009, by when Copenhagen Accord was supposed to happen, we'll have really solved this carbon offset thing. We'll have all the protocols and methodologies. There'll be lots of capital. We'll be removing gigatons of carbon out of the atmosphere. And then I'm going to be able to move on to other environmental assets like, biodiversity or water credits or other really neat social and environmental stuff. And it's like 15 years later than that, and we're still trying to make offsets really stick and build these tools. But I am, hope springs eternal. I will say that that the world has so far to go, right? Like, if we need to go carbon neutral by 2050, and that's a goal, and it would be pretty tough to achieve it by then. That's 29 years, and carbon emissions are still going up worldwide. Carbon emissions are still going up in most jurisdictions that are even really earnest and green-minded and green titled. So I think it's going to be an extremely important tool for a long time. I have a perhaps rare take on the nature of carbon offsets, and people will say, they're a last resort, so you got to reduce your own footprint first, and just not do stuff, and then offset the rest. And I kind of have like a slightly cheeky counterpoint that's a little bit cheeky, but it also is kind of sincere, which is carbon offsets are an extremely efficient way to deliver capital to opportunities to get and keep carbon out of the atmosphere. And under any situation, we need tools like that. Other ways are government subsidies. Other ways are putting in place carbon taxes, saying you got to pay for whatever you emit. You can emit whatever you want. You just got to pay for it. When you look around at these different tools, it's like there's a discipline to carbon offsets where you only get paid for the tons you can get or keep out of the atmosphere and prove it. So it's a lot different than, we're going to do this nice thing and it's going to have a bunch of benefits and just pay us for it. It's like, no, man, you only get paid per offset. And so I think that, we have a long way to go in refining and deploying. I think we've got significantly refined, but deploying this economic mechanism, a payment for performance mechanism to get stuff done. And so if we do, as we do solve the climate crisis, I think turning that type of economic model to other pressing issues of the day can get humanity a long way. And then, where we go from that, and where I think, Klima fundamentally comes in, is you guys have cracked the nut on capital deployment and capital raising to invest in emission reduction outcomes. Like, are we at like 13 million tons right now? So that's like the carbon footprint of a fifth of British Columbia. A fifth of our yearly impact. It's like almost a million. It's definitely a million Europeans' annual carbon footprint. It's kind of like 500,000 North Americans' carbon footprint. But think of that, like a million Europeans' carbon footprint has been ingested into the Klima system in a month and a half. And so that's the kind of giga scale, pop up a couple order of magnitude that we need, and connecting that to the diligence of offsets. Man, it's the best thing since sliced bread, and I'm so stoked about it. And everybody here, keep up the great work. Keep the nose to the grindstone. Get some Christmas break, but or December holiday break. But this is very important work.
Awesome, thank you for that. Archie, just to follow up, or maybe Dionysus, you have some perspective here too. There's also been some questions about whether Klima's treasury will move beyond just carbon offsets. Well, I guess two questions. One, like, when will we have more verifiers beyond just Verra? And also, will we ever move beyond just carbon offsets to things like renewable energy or land management? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll chime in just on timelines, but Dionysus, you can talk about offsets and how they sometimes act as a proxy for those things. January is probably like where we'll start seeing more. So that's what I'm told by a number of organizations that are working on different bridges for different carbon resources. So once they finish, like it's all in audits apparently, like most of it, they're just waiting for results. And once it's ready, and they're going to start moving it all on chain so we can start offering incentives for that. But yeah, around January time is probably where I'm going to see most of this stuff start to take an uptake, just because like that's how long it takes to get this stuff done.
Yeah, if I could jump in on this point related to that previous question as well on the types of different offsets, and is there going to be a day when offsets aren't necessarily required? I think it's a really interesting question that's related to the dialogue ongoing with net zero right now, because essentially net zero is all about reducing the emissions that organizations and companies are emitting and so on. Perhaps purchasing offsets that are mitigation type offsets where they limit the amount of greenhouse gases that are being emitted and so on. But the key part of net zero actually is that once you're at a state where you can't reduce your emissions any further, and there's many industries in the world that are like this. If you talk about the cement industry, for instance, it's responsible for nearly, I think, close to 2% of global emissions. The current industrial processes for that just simply don't allow you to necessarily reduce your emissions even more. So for a company like this, what they then are instructed to do with the net zero criteria as they are right now, through something called the Science-Based Targets Initiative, is that they should purchase what are called removal offsets. Now, removals right now refer to offsets that are actually sequestering carbon dioxide. So the most scalable technology that we have as a species to do this is simply to plant trees, right? But we've probably heard of carbon capture and storage, things of this nature. So there's other technologies that'll come that will produce offsets that are considered removal type offsets, and they're still going to have to be employed by these different organizations to have a net zero claim, because there's certain industries and sectors where you just can't reduce beyond a certain point as it stands right now. Of course, I'm sure technology will keep improving and so on, but so offsets are probably going to be around still for the next 50 years, potentially, which I think is quite interesting. And I think that'll play into Klima's treasury, right? As we scale up and we let different assets in, it's likely that there's going to be other types of pools that have those specifications, right? It could be a removals focused offsetting pool, or it could be removals focused plus blue carbon. So things like mangrove restoration and so on. There's a lot of different avenues there. And then the final piece is, well, what are other types of sustainability-oriented assets which are productive and could produce value and could end up in Klima's treasury? Renewable energy infrastructure is one, because there are groups that are working on tokenizing and fractionalizing this infrastructure, and then there's a dividend essentially paid out, on when this infrastructure is selling electricity and so on. And the same is being worked on with carbon projects themselves, where the ownership of the carbon project can be tokenized, and then the holders of that token are able to receive offsets directly when those are issued. So there's a lot of different pathways ahead. It's quite exciting.
Awesome. I think it's time to get some community members up here.
Yeah.
Hey, Rez, welcome.
Hey there. Hey, Joseph, thanks for the insight. Large-scale carbon footprint changes can't possibly be incentivized hard or fast enough. I think we really appreciate your hustle as well as your great taste in microphones. I'm expecting your referral code in the chat. I have two short questions. So the first one is that I understand that no ITMOs have been issued yet. Is it clear on the policy side of are there going to be vintages issued prior to this year? Do we have an understanding of the volumes we are going to be seeing in the next few months? And what's happening?
Yeah, great. Man, I realize that thanks for your kind words. And I realize that in your question there's a plank that I need to be researching more, or that could use some more research, which is how do we project volumes? And I guess probably one way is by asking, but that is a great question. I actually don't know about if past vintage years can be issued, but I have a feeling that they will be. And I know that some of the folks that have been really big boosters of blockchain for climate and the BITMO platform have been either countries or multilateral organizations that have emission reduction outcomes that have been being generated largely in the lesser developed world, that are just sitting kind of on the books, ready to go and ready to be traded, but there's no mechanism or pathway to trade them or market to trade them on. And this is kind of intense, right? Because if you think back to 2015, you're a country that is able to get or keep carbon out of the atmosphere, and you want to fund that and sell that, and you get to work on it and maybe take funding for it or whatever. But then 6 years later, 5.5 years later, and there's still no way to get it to market, that gets pretty pressing. So I believe that there will be pre-2021 vintages. And I imagine when stuff gets flowing that it'll be significant. And it really is that question: can we, through the BITMO platform or other folks, working in the traditional sense or otherwise, start getting these issued and to market ASAP? Or are people still feeling like they need to wait, national governments feeling like they need to wait for the official UNFCCC architecture to do so? A last thing I'll note is one of the, how did we get together, get a Paris Agreement in 2015, and how did we all finally come together? One of the interesting things, and why didn't we in 2009 in Copenhagen? And a big reason, along with time and severity of climate impacts, is it is really difficult to have all national governments of the world agree on anything, including something as major with such industrial impacts as emission reductions. And so because of this, Article 6.2 ITMOs are going to have a very wide range of variability of quote unquote quality, or put in a less sort of judgmental term, national governments have a wide leeway to issue ITMOs that they believe are legitimate. And in absence of, someone like a Verra, or what's eventually going to happen around Article 6.4, where there's going to actually be, an organization housed at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change that administers this system, there's going to be limited supply side quality control as far as everybody feels. And so where that quality control is going to have to, and discernment is going to have to be on the buy side. And that's one of the things that we've really endeavored to do in the BITMO platform, is surface all of this information around quality, all these different metrics. And we believe that national governments, whether they're making sovereign purchases, like we know Norway is going to buy a lot of tons, Switzerland is going to buy a lot of tons, they will probably formalize a set of rules around what's eligible. So what vintages, what countries, what project types. And so we want to have this natively surfaced on our system so that they can plug into that. And I can even see sort of a day where you just go in and click, I'm from this country, or, I'm an emitter from this country, because I think along with national sovereign purchases, there will also be governments saying, okay, large emitters in country, we have a compliance system in Europe. They already have a cap and trade system. And so we'll allow you to purchase a quarter of your compliance tons from the international market, for example, or all of it, or whatever. And we will require, or we will only allow for retirement, aka burning, carbon credits of these ITMOs of these specific characteristics. And so, that's a long way of answering that question around how much, and how far back is it going to come in. I think that is sovereignly driven. And we want to see a race to the top rather than a race to the bottom. But even if there's sort of a bifurcation, a forking of the market for really high quality stuff that has demand by countries that are putting a lot of capital into this, and other stuff maybe from countries that are not taking it quite so seriously, we want to have the asset information to manage for that. Thank you.
That was such an excellent answer. Thank you. I also can see that this has some implications on there being multiple possible liquidity pools for BITMOs in the future. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, if you like arbitrage.
Yeah, quite interesting. So second question is that you're launching on Ethereum. So why not just immediately join us here in Polygon land, where the major carbon offset trading is on chain is currently happening?
Yeah, great question. And one has to keep in mind that we got going in 2017. And
Yeah.
so, may have Ethereum maxi tendencies, which I consider Polygon part of. I think that's appropriate. And so, the reason why we've gone with Ethereum has a couple practical realities, including that, we've been pointed at it for a while, and so we've delivered on that. Another is that it's difficult enough to communicate crypto with the default world, with traditional carbon markets and governments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, people may have heard of Bitcoin, maybe heard of Ethereum, probably haven't heard of Polygon or Matic, or at least not till, Klima is only a month and a half old, so that's changing rapidly. But I think from a trust and understandability, and then also from a durability, right? So if we're trying to build the underpinnings of this system that's going to last, to 2050 and beyond, we felt like building it on the rock of Ethereum made a lot of sense. Now, the other reason was initially we felt like the amount of trade and transactions was going to be modest. So national governments were going to start issuing and exchanging. Governments will slowly make their sovereign purchases or put in place government regulations. And so the liquidity needs and just sort of trade volume needs were looking to be smaller. And also we see a lot of large transactions like, okay, we're going to issue 1 million tons. We're going to sell you 1 million tons in one transaction. So gas is not a big deal. Klima, of course, has completely blown us out of the water in a few ways, including showing how well it can work on Polygon, in terms of creating a retail market and a DeFi market for these assets, and being a lot quicker to market. I'm going to go out there on a limb and say than a lot of these sovereign buyers. So hopefully we'll have issuances early sometime next year and a ton of volume. So we will have to revisit that. But that's sort of the genesis of why this is the case. And we do, just to sort of rearguard action, we recognize that Ethereum has a significant carbon footprint. We also felt that our launch was going to kind of coincide fairly closely with ETH 2.0. Looks like we'll be we are a little bit ahead of that. So we're going to be using the awesome team at Offsetras, Carbon.FYI, to track the carbon emissions of our protocol and offset those with high quality offsets.
Like
maybe
BCTs.
BCTs at this point. Recognize that it's an issue, and hopefully that's going away soon. But it is something that we really recognize, and we felt like the Ethereum ecosystem is worth it because of, that's where the green money Legos are. That's where all these interoperable tools are being built, that it was worth the focus to deliver on that platform. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joseph. I think I asked enough questions, so I should probably open the floor for other people. But yeah, thanks, Klima people,
Awesome.
for bringing me on. Cheers.
Great questions, Rez.
Hello.
Hey, Marvin, welcome.
Again, Mr. Marvin.
Hey.
Welcome
Thank you. So I have some questions. I got here a little late, and I heard some parts of this, but I'm just curious. So isn't there some sort of risk that opening to multiple standards degrades the integrity of the protocol, or the integrity of the? I know that Joseph just spoke to this, but that's my concern. That's something that I've heard from someone in the space that's a bit skeptical of Klima because they think that they're just going to flood the market with low quality carbon credits. So my question is, like you were mentioning taking on other credits, but how would we be able to maintain the quality control necessary to underpin this system? Because if that's once you open the
Yes, it's a great question, Marvin. I'll hog an answer, and I'm sure Klima team has got more answers to this as well. So I think that Verra was a great pick for the BCT and right out the starting gate. And people will talk about, oh, it's just sweeping the floor, but even 2008 verified carbon units, they have achieved verified carbon standard issuance, and this is a high bar. It's extremely difficult to do that, and I know that is actually an unsuccessful issuer of Veritons from back in 2011 with a project. So it's a really high bar. So this is speaking to the quality of BCTs. I think where Klima goes with pools next is very important. I believe that going to other existing good practice guidance offset standards like the gold standard, like the American Carbon Registry, like if they wanted to other compliance standards like California's Climate Action Reserve or British Columbia's sort of Pacific Carbon Standard, these are all, and this, sometimes people will take a swing at this, but me as an OG in carbon markets, like these are top quality standards, and they create top quality offsets. And so any of these established good practice guidance real offset systems, I think will make great quality feedstock for any pools that Klima chooses to use. And going beyond that and looking at other stuff, I don't make the rules. I would say that if we're constraining stuff to carbon, doing stuff where it is really provable offsets with the good practice guidance that's been followed by the space for a long time makes a lot of sense to go with. But other folks will have some other takes on that as well.
Okay, thank you. And also, I heard from someone else, their criticism was, who's to say that like companies looking to offset their credits want to use BCT to do so? This is what I heard was that BCT is not basically just that's not what they're looking for. They're not looking for Verra, I guess.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Dionysus.
I was just going to say, I mean, Verra services probably over 75% of the voluntary carbon market, and it's something that a lot of companies look for as a sort of the golden star when it comes to offsetting. Gold standard and Verra are the two largest standards that are.
I'm not sure if he was positioning himself to speak by unmuting, but
I think there might be an audio issue with Dionysus.
Do you not hear him, Marvin?
No, I don't hear him.
I hear him.
Yeah, I don't hear him.
I hear him perfectly fine. This happens every time.
Yeah, he's going to drop and rejoin. Hopefully that resolves it.
He'll also be in the recording, so.
I'll go ahead and make some statements to that. So first off, I guess Klima is a user of the BCT, and other people are, using it and gearing up to use it. And I do think it's actually going to have significant use of this toucan generated environmental asset into other systems. But I think fundamentally, so the question of demand for Verra and for BCTs, does affect the risk, I believe affects the risk-free value at some extent. But I think that the main goal of this is not to have other people buying BCT. Somebody might say otherwise, but the main goal is not to have the market uptake BCT as what they buy for their corporate compliance or their carbon neutral goals. It's something that's fed into the DeFi ecosystem, and I know that DeFi players and crypto players are very keen on BCTs, as a liquid, reasonably priced, significant other demand at Klima type of asset.
I don't know if can you hear me now, Marvin?
Yeah, now I
Can
can.
you now?
Okay, great. Thanks for jumping in on that one, Joseph. I just wanted to add that one of the things that's been created now is an extremely deep liquid market for procuring carbon offsets, which is something that doesn't exist in its current form at a lot of exchanges. There's a huge amount of transparency right now. People can trade whenever they want to, and there are forward-thinking companies, if they have large volumes that they do require, that would then be able to look to these pools that we've created for their sourcing options, and that's going to expand in the future, of course, right? Because you're going to have multiple pools that may represent different types of offsetting assets and so on. And there's also advantages to utilizing a tokenized offset over a legacy offset, in that there's a value add from being able to use it as collateral. So those of us that have used the market protocol are familiar with that. There's the value add of being able to just programmatically integrate it into your own needs. So for a lot of DeFi protocols, they can already calculate their carbon emissions elsewhere, and then just be able to buy and then burn, or then retire the BCTs to have carbon neutrality. And of course, you can see where that can be expanded to other types of activities once companies plug in their own financial systems into the DeFi world.
Okay. I'm just trying to think. I'm just internalizing the implications of those statements, because I don't know. I have to think about what I think of for that, because I don't know what I like. If that's so good for the ecosystem, I think that there might be some area for manipulation there, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think think about it more like, we know the advantages of DeFi and smart contracts, and think about carbon as a new building block, essentially, in that ecosystem. I think there's a lot of exciting possibilities there, but yeah, you can certainly think that over.
Word. Okay. Thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers. Should we bring the next person up?
Yeah. I think we do one more question and we can cap it there. We've been running almost an hour, so I don't want to take more of Joseph's time than we need to. Although I appreciate your soft, soothing voice.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. First of all, guys, actually, it's the first time I'm speaking, so I would just like to congratulate everyone working in the idea of Klima. For me, it's something really different, I'm not actually super experienced with crypto in general. I'm quite new to DeFi and everything, but I've been talking to many people that have been investing into the area. And it's crazy how that project actually has a solid goal, looking to change something, to actually produce a long-lasting effect and helping the environment. So, as a matter of fact, firstly, I just like to thank, to ask.
That's awesome. No, thank you. Okay, so I have a question for you, Mr. Muffin.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Mr.
No
Muffin.
problem.
How the heck did you get into Klima? If DeFi is new to you, how did you find out what we're doing, and how did you? I want to hear the origin story, because this is really important. Like I constantly stress this to everybody. I'm like, guys, a lot of our users are new people, exactly like what you're describing, who've never interacted with DeFi or crypto in general, and I really want to understand what the user journey looks like for you, and how do we make that easier for other people.
Cool. So, actually, I'm from Brazil, and DeFi in here is not so popular. I've been introduced to DeFi recently, but I got into Klima due to Chico Crypto, that YouTuber. He's been chilling some projects and all of that, and I knew about Olympus, but I think that Ethereum had always a big problem due to its fees, just too high. But since somehow Polygon is not only cheaper but faster, I did get into Klima first due to the API, of course. It just struck me on my attention, I wanted to know more about it. When I realized that the project had like some fundamentals about the carbon credits and all of that, that's when I actually got more interest on it. I became a holder indeed. Before I was just trying to look for like good farms or good yielding project and all of that. I did invite some friends though, but I tried to say that I think in the contribute channel, because there are no like audit badges or anything like that. People sometimes get worried, for it might be in a rug pull or something like that. Since I wasn't really scared or that I didn't invest the money that I could not lose, I just thought it was a great opportunity to try something new, and maybe help the environment.
That is awesome. Okay, that's really cool to hear. So, otherwise, you've never interacted with DeFi? Like, this is like your first foray into that ecosystem?
Yeah, so in Brazil, it's still quite early, we're really not into even crypto. It's still early. We have some people shilling projects on Binance all the time, but because our current currency is so devaluated compared to the dollar, not many people can afford, for example, to pay Ethereum fees. So we end up farming projects into Binance or some, my opinion, crap blockchains. But yeah, it's actually it's nice. I hope to do some marketing for Klima here in Brazil. There are some channels, YouTube channels, that are like not aware at all that such project exists in the first place. So it will be like a pleasure to help you guys with that, at least here in Brazil, And we have Amazon, by the way, so.
Yeah, very cool. So, okay, so what's your question? Because I just totally derailed what you were going to say because I was genuinely curious. But yeah, what's your actual question?
Yeah, no worries. So my question would be, I asked that the other day on the contribute channel. I would just like to know, how can I personally contribute with marketing? I have like great ideas. I'm a photographer, a professional photographer for a while. I do some videos as well. I had some ideas, and at least here in Brazil, as I said, there are many people they are not aware of the project, and I'm sure that if they knew how the project worked and why it exists, people will be getting into it like quickly, So I will just want to know, how could I contribute like in a proper way, like that,
Marcus has got the deets on the.
Yeah. So we are very close to opening up the DAO contributor server. We just need to lock down a few more aspects of the Notion workflow, but we're targeting early next week. So once the contributor server opens up, we'll post a link in the contribute channel here in the public server. We'll also probably make an announcement, at which point you can join the server, and there will be a formal application process where you'll get to select which department you're interested in joining, and then submit an application to that department with your experience and background and what, how much time you can dedicate to the project. And then the department leads will tap people in based on the needs of the department. We're also going to try to organize some kind of internship program where we allow people to sort of self-organize and work on projects sort of within the DAO structure, but without formally joining a team. It's kind of a way to, I really love your enthusiasm, Muffin, and I think we talked briefly in the contribute channel, and we don't want to shut anybody down or like make them feel like they can't contribute just because they haven't been like fully inducted into a department. So that's the idea with the internship program. It'll probably just take the form of some channels that you get access to when you apply to a department, where you'll be able to work with other applicants who haven't yet been accepted into the full department. But basically, we can only, we really only have so much bandwidth, right? We need to have some structure around bringing more people in so that we don't end up with like 1,000 people all asking like, what do I do?
Great, no worry. Oh, sure, it's fine. When you guys have the structure, everything going, we'll apply to it then. It's nice because, as I said, in Brazil, people are really focused on climate, and we have like forests. I think there's a great opportunity here, and because not many people are aware of the project, I think that's where the opportunity comes. I can see the project growing a lot, at least in here. So, and Polygon is a great blockchain for that. Yeah, but thank you very much, guys. I think that's it mostly.
You're welcome, man.
Thanks,
Look forward to
Muffin.
working with you.
Yes.
All right, I think we should wrap it there. But this has been awesome. I want to say thank you to Joseph again for coming on as our surprise guest. I think it's been awesome hearing all your knowledge, and I hope to have you guys back here maybe in the new year once we have more stuff up and running. We can do another one. Stoked to see when you're going to go on the podcast, because that'll be sweet. That's going to be really cool to see what they come up with. Those guys are wicked creative. Is there any other closing statements you guys want to have? Lily Apper, Chaz? I know Chaz maybe had a couple announcements. This is like more housekeeping than anything. I deployed yesterday the site back to Fleek, so we're back on like in sync with the two. So there's the regular site which runs on Versal, which can handle a significant amount of traffic, and then failover is on IPFS. We're on Fleek, so if you type IPFS.KlimaDAO.finance, you'll show up with the site. It's all there now. So just so we had like rolling backups and like more than one site, because I know that was a problem on the first day. Like we crashed Versal, which was hilarious, but not hilarious because we had to fix it. So so that's that. I mean, other than that, I'll see you guys probably next week, and then we can go from there. I mean, there's probably the week of the 20th. We probably will skip some of these calls and then maybe do one on the 30th. How are you feeling about that, Chaz?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I also wanted to announce that so we're thinking about reworking these office hours, because some people have talked about 2 a week of the same topics isn't necessarily helpful because the same questions get repeated. So what we're going to be doing is probably dropping the Tuesday office hours and trying to do more topic specific like sessions. I'll be making an announcement about that soon.
Yeah, one other housekeeping note. Given the shorter rebase period as discussed in KIP5 and announced a few days ago, we have updated all of the APY calculators and the bonding calculators. So please, if you're using a copy of those calculators, go and check back in the official links and make sure you update to use the newer version to reflect the shorter rebase periods.
Sweet. All right, cool, guys. Well, great talking to you, and we'll see you next time.
And thanks for joining us. See you guys.
Cheers. See you, everybody.
Thanks.
Peace.